I walked into my kitchen at 6:15 on a Tuesday morning, and my daughter Emily, her husband Brad, and my older brother Robert were sitting at my granite island with a stack of manila folders spread out between them. Emily looked up, and the expression on her face wasn't guilt or surprise. It was relief, like she'd been waiting for me to finally show up to my own intervention. "Mom," she said, "we need to talk. Right now." I had just gotten back from my morning swim. I'd been swimming a mile every day for the past 40 years, ever since I'd opened my first physical therapy clinic in 1985. I was 65 years old, and I could still do a flip turn that would put most 30-year-olds to shame. I had built a chain of 7 clinics across Oregon and Washington. I had sold that chain 3 years ago for $18 million. I had invested wisely. I had a beautiful home in Lake Oswego with a view of the river. I had friends, hobbies, and a calendar full of volunteer work and travel plans. But standing there in my own kitchen, dripping chlorine water onto my Italian tile, looking at the 3 people who were supposed to love me most in this world, I felt my stomach drop. "What's going on?" I asked. "Is someone hurt?" My brother Robert cleared his throat. He was 4 years older than me and had spent most of his adult life bouncing between sales jobs and get-rich-quick schemes. "No one's hurt, Susan. But we need to discuss some concerns we've been having." "Sit down, Mom." Emily gestured to the bar stool across from her. "Please, I'd rather stand. What concerns?" Brad, my son-in-law, put his hand over Emily's like he was comforting her through something difficult. "Your memory, Susan. Your decision-making. We've all noticed some troubling patterns." I stared at my daughter. Emily was 38 years old. I had raised her alone after her father walked out when she was 2. I put myself through PT school while working nights as a nurse's aide so I could give her a good life. I paid for her wedding. I gave her and Brad the down payment on their house in West Lynn. I had babysat their 2 kids every Friday night for the past 6 years so they could have date nights. "What patterns?" I asked. Robert pulled a piece of paper from one of the folders. "Last month, you forgot about Thanksgiving dinner. We were all at Emily's house waiting for you, and you didn't show up until we called you 3 hours later. That was a lie. A complete lie. I had told Emily 2 weeks before Thanksgiving that I was going to Palm Springs with my friend Diane, and she had said, 'Fine, have fun, we'll miss you.' I had sent her a photo of me and Diane at dinner that night. I still had the text thread to prove it. "I went to Palm Springs," I said slowly. "I told Emily I wouldn't be there. She said it was fine." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, that's not what happened. You said you'd be there. You forgot about our plans. When we called you, you were confused about what day it was." "I was not confused. I was in California, exactly where I said I'd be." "See?" Brad said quietly, like he was talking to the other 2 and not to me. "This is what we're talking about. The defensiveness. The alternate version of events." I looked at the folders on the counter. Even from where I stood, I could see letterhead from a law firm I didn't recognize. My heart started pounding the way it used to when I was waiting for my business loan approval, back when everything I owned was on the line. "What are those papers?" "Just some documents to help make things easier for you." Emily's voice had that syrupy sweetness people use when they're trying to convince you of something. "You've worked so hard your whole life, Mom. You've been managing everything alone for so long. We want to help." "I have an accountant," I said. "I have a financial advisor. I don't need help." "Your accountant is 83 years old," Robert said. "Your financial advisor hasn't returned your calls in months because you keep forgetting you already talked to him." Another lie. My accountant was 67 and sharp as ever. My financial advisor and I had spoken exactly once in the past month, a scheduled quarterly review. Everything was documented in my email. "That's not true," I said. "Mom." Emily stood up. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be. We love you. We're trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" "From yourself." Brad's voice was quiet but firm. "From making decisions that could hurt you financially, medically, legally. You're 65, Susan. You're showing early signs of cognitive decline. We've been documenting it for months. The missed appointments, the repeated conversations, the paranoia." The room tilted slightly. "Paranoia. Cognitive decline. Documenting it for months." Robert slid the top folder toward me. "This is a durable power of attorney. It gives Emily and me the authority to make financial and medical decisions on your behalf if you're unable to. It's just a precaution, Susan, just in case. I picked up the folder, flipped it open. The document was already filled out with my name, Emily's name, Robert's name. All it needed was my signature. And if I don't sign? The three of them exchanged a look. Then we'll have to pursue other options. Emily's voice broke. We don't want to do this the hard way, Mom, but we will if we have to. We've already talked to an attorney. We have medical documentation. We have witness statements. Witness statements about what? About your declining mental state. Robert folded his hands. 3 different people have expressed concern about your ability to live independently and manage your own affairs. I looked at each of them. My daughter, who wouldn't meet my eyes now. My son-in-law, who had that same fake sympathetic look on his face. My brother, who had borrowed money from me 6 times in the past 10 years and never paid any of it back. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Mom, we're not leaving until we figure this out. Emily reached for my hand. We're doing this because we love you. Get out. I pulled my hand back. All of you. Now. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, locked the door, and stood at the window overlooking my pool. I could hear them downstairs, their voices rising and falling. I caught Brad saying something about calling the lawyer, Emily saying something about crisis intervention, Robert saying something about moving faster before I had time to hide assets. I didn't cry. I had stopped crying in 1987 when my husband left, and I realized I was going to have to do everything alone. I didn't cry when I worked 3 jobs to get through school. I didn't cry when the bank almost foreclosed on my first clinic. I didn't cry when Emily told me at 16 that I was a terrible mother who cared more about work than her. I didn't cry now. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I had created 4 months ago. The one I had titled 2026 Tax Documents, but that actually contained something much more important. 4 months ago, I had noticed an email in my spam folder. It was a password reset notification for my investment account, one I hadn't requested. The IP address was traced to West Lynn. That's where Emily and Brad lived. I had immediately changed all my passwords, enabled 2-factor authentication, and set up alerts on every account. Then, I had started watching. I noticed that Emily had started asking me strange questions over our weekly coffee dates. Had I updated my will recently? Did I have a healthcare directive? What were my wishes if I became incapacitated? I noticed that Brad had started coming over to fix things around the house, things that didn't need fixing. He would ask to use my computer to look something up. I would say yes and watch as he clicked through folders when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I noticed that Robert, who usually only called when he needed money, had started calling every few days to check on me. How was I feeling? Was I remembering to take my vitamins? Had I been to the doctor lately? I was a physical therapist. I had spent 40 years evaluating people, watching their movements, identifying patterns they didn't even know they were displaying. I knew exactly what I was seeing. So I had done what I do best. I documented everything. I installed security cameras throughout my house. Oregon is a one-party consent state for audio recording in your own home, especially when you suspect criminal activity. I had checked with my attorney to make sure everything was legal. I recorded every conversation. I saved every text message and email. I took screenshots of every suspicious login attempt on my accounts. I also made copies of Brad's browser history from my home computer. How to get power of attorney for aging parent. Signs of dementia in women over 60. How long does conservatorship process take? Can adult children override their parents' will? But most importantly, I had done something none of them knew about. 2 months ago, I had met with my estate attorney, Mitchell Hayes, a man I had trusted for 20 years. Together, we had restructured everything. My liquid assets, about $12 million in stocks and bonds, had been moved into an irrevocable trust with Mitchell as the independent trustee. My house and rental properties were transferred to an LLC. My retirement accounts already had designated beneficiaries that didn't include Emily or Robert. On paper, in any accounts they could potentially access, I had about $75,000. Everything else was locked away where they couldn't touch it. I had also updated my will. Everything would be divided equally among 5 organizations: the American Physical Therapy Association, a scholarship fund for single mothers in healthcare, the Nature Conservancy, the local children's hospital, and a women's shelter I had volunteered at for years. Not a single dollar for Emily, not a penny for Robert, nothing for Brad. And I had written a letter explaining exactly why. The next morning, I woke up to 43 missed calls. Most from Emily, several from Robert, 3 from Brad, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize. I blocked all of them. Then I called Mitchell Hayes. "Susan," he said when he answered, "I was hoping you'd call. I received some very interesting paperwork yesterday. Your family has filed a petition for guardianship. I had expected it, but hearing it out loud still made my chest tight. On what grounds? They have affidavits from 3 people claiming you're showing signs of severe cognitive impairment. They have a medical evaluation from a Dr. Patricia Lawson stating that you're a danger to yourself and others. I've never met a Dr. Patricia Lawson in my life." "I know. I already looked her up. She's a geriatric psychiatrist in Portland. She's also Brad's aunt." "Of course she was. What do we do?" I asked. "We fight. And Susan, based on the evidence you've been collecting, we're going to destroy them." The hearing was scheduled for 4 weeks later. During those 4 weeks, I did not speak to my family. I didn't answer their calls or texts. I didn't open the door when Emily showed up at my house crying. I just kept living my life exactly as I always had. I swam every morning. I had lunch with friends. I volunteered at the physical therapy clinic at the university. I went to book club. I attended a 3-day workshop on lymphedema treatment in Seattle. I took my grandchildren to the zoo while Emily was at work, but I documented everything with time-stamped photos and kept all our conversations on my phone's voice recorder. I also hired a private investigator that Mitchell recommended. Her name was Sarah Chen, and within 2 weeks, she had found some very enlightening information. Emily and Brad had taken out a home equity line of credit 6 months ago for $300,000. They were $48,000 in credit card debt spread across 7 cards. Brad's tech startup had failed, and he had burned through the $200,000 I had given him to invest in it. Emily's boutique marketing agency was hemorrhaging money because she kept hiring her friends instead of qualified employees. They needed money, a lot of it. And they needed it soon. Or they were going to lose everything. Robert was even worse. His 3rd wife had divorced him and taken half of what little he had. He had been living in a rented room in Gresham for the past year. He owed back taxes. He had 2 maxed-out credit cards and a gambling problem he thought nobody knew about. He had been borrowing money from our mother before she died last year. Now he had no one left to borrow from except me. They weren't worried about my health. They weren't concerned about my well-being. They wanted my money. And they were willing to destroy my reputation and my autonomy to get it. The day of the hearing, I wore a charcoal gray pantsuit and my favorite turquoise necklace. I brought 3 large binders filled with organized, tabbed documentation. Mitchell had prepared a presentation with video evidence, financial records, medical evaluations, and testimony from multiple witnesses. I also had something they didn't expect. I had affidavits from 4 different doctors I had worked with in the past year, all confirming that I was cognitively sharp, physically healthy, and showed absolutely no signs of impairment. I had statements from my financial advisor, my accountant, my property manager, and the director of the women's shelter where I volunteered, all testifying that I managed my affairs with complete competence. I had my swimming coach, who confirmed I swam 5 days a week and had recently completed a master's swim meet. I had the director of the PT program at the university, confirming I had guest lectured 3 times in the past semester. But most importantly, I had the recordings. The video from my kitchen where Emily said, "We need to get control of the accounts before she moves everything." The audio from my living room where Brad told Robert, "Once we have guardianship, we can liquidate the rental properties and pay off our debts." The recording from my dining room where Emily said, "Aunt Patricia already agreed to write the evaluation without actually examining her. She owes Brad's family a favor." The video of Robert saying, "Susan's always been stubborn and controlling. We're doing her a favor by taking over. She'll thank us eventually when she's sitting in a nice facility somewhere." When Judge Morrison asked if I wanted to present evidence, I stood up. Mitchell set up the laptop and projector. "Your Honor," I said, "I'd like to show you something." We played the first video, then the second, then the third. I watched Emily's face go white. I watched Brad start sweating through his dress shirt. I watched Robert close his eyes and put his head in his hands. When the videos finished, Judge Morrison removed her glasses and set them on the bench. "Miss Thornton," she said, "I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of attempted fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit theft." She looked at Emily, Brad, and Robert. "You should be ashamed of yourselves." The DA's office moved quickly. Within 3 weeks, all 3 of them were charged. Emily and Brad were charged with attempted financial exploitation of an elder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and solicitation of a fraudulent medical evaluation. Robert was charged as an accomplice to elder abuse and conspiracy. Dr. Patricia Lawson, Brad's aunt, was charged with fraud and filing a false medical report. The Oregon Medical Board suspended her license pending investigation. The story made the local news. Then, the national news. Successful physical therapist exposes family's plot to steal millions. I did one interview with the local NPR station. I focused on raising awareness about elder financial abuse and the warning signs family members should watch for. I talked about the importance of protecting yourself legally and financially, even from people you love. The interview went viral. I received hundreds of emails from people sharing their own stories, thanking me for speaking up, asking for advice. Emily called me from her lawyer's office. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that started with, "Mom, please," and ended with, "You're ruining our lives over money." I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Brad sent me a letter. He said I had misunderstood everything. He said they were only trying to help. He said my grandchildren would grow up without knowing me because I was too proud to admit I needed support. I sent the letter to Mitchell. Sarah Chen, the private investigator, confirmed that Brad and Emily had tried to take out a loan using my name as a co-signer 2 weeks before the kitchen confrontation. The loan application was fraudulent. That was another charge added to their case. Robert showed up at my house one evening. I watched him from my upstairs window as he rang the doorbell 7 times, then sat on my front steps for 20 minutes before finally leaving. He left a note under my doormat. "Susan, I'm your only brother. Our parents would be heartbroken to see this. You're destroying our family over a misunderstanding. Please call me. We can fix this." I threw the note away without responding. Our parents were dead, and if they were heartbroken about anything, it would be about what Robert had tried to do to me. The trial was relatively quick. Emily took a plea deal. 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, restitution of legal fees. Brad got the same. Robert got 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service because he technically hadn't signed any of the fraudulent documents, just encouraged them. Dr. Patricia Lawson lost her medical license permanently and was sentenced to 2 years in prison for fraud. I attended every hearing. I sat in the front row and looked each of them in the eye. I wanted them to see me, healthy and strong and completely competent, to know exactly what they had tried to do and exactly how badly they had failed. Now, 6 months later, I'm sitting on my back deck with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over the river. I have a new routine. I swim every morning, but I've added yoga 3 times a week. I volunteer at the women's shelter 4 times a month, teaching self-defense and financial literacy workshops. I mentor young female physical therapists through a program I started with the PT Association. I travel. Last month, I went to Croatia with Diane and 2 other friends. Next month, I'm going to New Zealand. I also started a foundation, the Susan Thornton Foundation for Elder Rights. We provide free legal assistance to seniors facing financial abuse from family members. We've already helped 23 people in Oregon and Washington fight back against children, siblings, and spouses who saw them as nothing more than ATM machines. I sleep better now than I have in years. I wake up without that low-level anxiety I didn't even realize I had been carrying, the feeling that something was off, that people I loved were lying to me. People ask me if I'm lonely. They look at me with pity when I show up to events alone, when I take trips with friends instead of family, when I spend holidays volunteering instead of sitting around a table with people who share my DNA. I'm not lonely. I have real friends who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. I have colleagues who respect my mind and my expertise. I have my grandchildren, who I see occasionally through supervised visits that Emily agreed to as part of her plea deal, though I know that will end when she's released. I have a life I built with my own 2 hands, and nobody can take that from me now. Emily will be released in 9 months with good behavior. Brad will be out around the same time. Robert finished his community service last month and sent me a Facebook friend request that I ignored. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Emily and Brad are getting divorced. The financial stress and the criminal charges destroyed their marriage. Brad moved back in with his parents. Emily is living in a rental apartment and working as a barista while she tries to rebuild her marketing business. Robert, I heard, moved to Arizona to live with his daughter from his first marriage. I got my life back. I got my peace back. I got proof that I was right to trust my instincts, right to document everything, right to protect myself even when it meant cutting out the people I loved. I was never the problem. I was never incompetent or paranoid or irrational or confused about what day Thanksgiving was. I was a woman with resources, and they saw me as vulnerable because of my age and my gender. They thought I would be easy to manipulate because I loved them. They thought I would choose family over my own well-being because that's what women my age are supposed to do. They were wrong. I spent 40 years as a physical therapist. I learned to assess damage, to identify dysfunction, to know when something could be rehabilitated and when it needed to be removed entirely for the health of the whole system. Some relationships can't be saved, some people can't be trusted, no matter how much DNA you share. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is cut out the diseased tissue and let the healthy parts of your life flourish. I'm flourishing now. I'm healthier and happier at 65 than I was at 50. I wake up every day knowing that every person in my life actually wants me there, not just my money or my support or my resources. I have boundaries now. I have standards. I have self-respect that doesn't waver just because someone shares my last name or calls me mom. And I have zero regrets. Not one.